Welcome back, trainers, to the Collector's Emporium Top Cut Round 1. I'm Tyson, joined here by Courtney for our first round of Top Cut. We're going to be featuring both rounds of our Top Cut Masters into our finals, so 3 more sets before we close off the day. I've been so impressed by the level of gameplay that we've gotten to see today. Courtney, how do you feel about the games?
Oh, you know how I feel. I am all jazzed up seeing all these unique Pokemon, so many amazing trainers, some notable names, some names that we haven't really heard about that much, but all playing at the highest caliber that I've seen in quite a while, truthfully. From watching Stockholm last weekend and then watching this, it's honestly really been exhilarating. And also seeing the craziest Pokemon that I've seen in quite a minute. Seeing Ho-Oh, Galarian Weezing, all these different types of Pokemon that I've just not really seen that much. Even like Mienshao. Huh?
Yeah.
Mienshao? Ugh.
Exactly. And all those Pokemon are really cool too because they're not just cool to be cool. They have a lot of different adaptations depending on the team, and they still use a lot of the same restricteds. For example, the Iron Crown earlier that we saw on the Miraidon team, where it took advantage of that electric train, was really cool to see. You kind of were able to You're kind of able to pick and choose these pieces on teams like that, and it's really cool to see what people decide to do, or go out of the box completely and use something like that that you mentioned before. I think another thing that's really cool, as you said, is that it's kind of a blessing to see that these stream games in general at all. A lot of the local scenes don't really get to do a lot of these streamed opportunities. So getting to see something like that here and having that be streamed to everyone is so awesome. And getting to cast it as well with you as well has been a blast.
Oh, well, it same to you, Tyson. And I do want to give a shout out to our amazing crew on the scene. I know that they're working so hard to make sure that this production is here for everyone to see and to really recognize the trainers that are in their scene. But I do want to give a major shout out to them because I know they've worked so hard today to make sure that we've got this up and running. And I know that they've really made sure that these trainers are having the best PC that they possibly can have. And honestly, I'm excited for our first round of our top cut featuring Tim Edwards, which we all know and love, and Corey Okautsuwi. Okautsuwi? You gotta help me. Gotta help me out. I'm bad with
It's
that last
it.
name.
I believe it is Corey. Oh, okay. I can't do it either. I
Okonowitz?
apologize, Corey.
Okonowitz? Okonowitz?
Okonowitz.
Hey, we'll take it. We'll take it. But he has
Apologies, Corey.
no worries, but an amazing team to see. We see that Terapagos, which I know I've kind of said I'm not the biggest Terapagos fan, but seeing it with leftovers is very interesting. And that Incineroar running safety goggles, Amoonguss with that rocky helmet to make sure that if anything comes towards it, it can take it. That Ogremon Cornerstone, which, as we know, that sturdy ability is so prevalent in this current regulation. Heat Ram with Citrus Berry and at Urshifu with Mystic Water. So Corey is really coming out with something a little bit more unique, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. The Heatran here being kind of the staple version of the team. This is my favorite iteration of the Tropicos team that's come out. It relies again on your fundamentals of Pokemon, where it's all about the fake out positioning, when to follow me, when to attack. It really, really does come down to your fundamentals in Pokemon and how well you can kind of set up this Calm Mind Terapagos. And Terapagos is one of those things that we haven't seen a lot of today, but getting to see it in Top Cut is no surprise either. It is such a strong Pokemon in the right hands, and if Corey is able to find something like a Calm Mind against, Tim's Calyrex team that we get to see in round 1, I think this could be a very scary matchup. Of course, it could go in both ways. While Terapagos can't hit Calyrex with its normal move in base form, it can, when it terastallizes, hit onto the rest of the team for neutral damage, which is what Tropicos excels at. Is it doesn't do super effective damage, but it does neutral damage to everything. It does so much.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that we do have to keep in mind, kind of going back into Tim's team as well, running that Calyrex Shadow Rider, that Clefairy with the Eviolite, the Mienshao with that Focus Band, Rillaboom with the Self Vest, Fluttermane with that Booster Energy, and that Chi-Yu with that Covert Cloak, which I really, 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 really want to see that Mienshao come onto the field, truthfully. So I'm crossing my fingers that Tim is going to go ahead and bring that Pokemon. But honestly, I feel like Tim, the earlier game that we saw in that round one was fantastic. And I really can't wait to see how Tim goes ahead and like really plays this to go against that Terapagos that Corey might have.
I think if there was a matchup for it, I think Mian Shao is definitely, or the Tropicos is definitely the matchup to bring the Mian Shao in. Those close combats are going to do so much damage. But the thing is, with Focus Band, is you're actually able, I believe, to eat the Surging Strikes, because as long as you have the Focus Band and you get the Focus Band proc, you actually could potentially eat the Surging Strike. The last one. That would be a very hype to see if it is the Focus Band. I'm still confused if it's actually Focus Band or not. We literally just have to wait and see. But I think the
Yes.
core thing in Tim's game plan is making sure you can do enough damage to the opposing Pokemon so that you can get Mian Chao in a position where you can close combat the Tropicos. Because obviously, the Tropicos players know what their weakness is. They know that the close combat is coming towards them. It's just a matter of managing that and getting yourself in a position where the close combat doesn't hurt. Things like Incineroar, though, aren't going to be much use, though, because of inner focus on the Mian Shao, stopping both the fake out from flinching you and from the intimidates from the opposing Incineroar. Normally against Urshifu, even though you don't want to normally intimidate against Surging Strikes, once in a while the Incineroar can actually come in and intimidate so that close combat doesn't kill the Tropicos or not get the Tropicos. But in this case, the close combat's not going to be able to be mitigated at all. So it's really going to be up to Korea how they want to mitigate the close combat, either just taking the hit because they're bold or redirecting into something like the Ogerpon.
Yeah. Inner focus, as some would say, locked in. Once again, tomato, tomato. I'm just really excited to see that Mian Chao, especially having possibly that wide guard, which is so important, especially when we're talking about Terapagos in this matchup. I do think Calyrex Shadow Rider does kind of like to see Terapagos across from it, especially when it has a Pokemon with that close combat. But I think it's going to be extremely imperative for Tim to bring that Mian Chao because, of course, like you said, we need to make sure that Terapagos does not set up. We need to stay calm and make sure that for Tim to take out that Terapagos in order to go ahead and start to really build that momentum to get into that grand finals. But I know Corey is not going to let that happen easily. Let me tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a reason why Corey is here in this top cut. It's not their first rodeo. Again, Tri-State is such a strong region. Even if Corey was a random, right? The field is so strong that I believe anyone here in our top cut could definitely take the crown home today. And because of how small cut is as well, all he has to do is win 2 more sets. I say all he has to do, but I mean, who knows? Corey might have it. I'm a Tropicos believer, so I'm rooting for Corey, but no bias.
But no bias, no bias. But what are your thoughts on Heatran? I like that is just one of those Pokemon that I've been seeing crop up every now and again. But tell me your thoughts on it, especially when you're talking about built into Corey's team.
Yeah, so Heatran is definitely interesting. I don't think we'll get to see it this game because it's not really a tool used in this game. Heatran is one of those Pokemon that you kind of throw last second on the team to fix a matchup. So something like the Dondozo, Heatran is very strong against because you can lock it in with Magma Storm, and it also kind of just sits there. You would think a fire type isn't good into Dondozo, but with something like the Terra Fairy, Heatran actually is a really good piece at sitting against those kinds of teams. It's also just a really good balance breaker. So against those Incineroar, Rillaboom, Amogus teams, Heatran can also sit there and continue to click Magma Storm, as well as just do good damage with Earth Power or Flash Cannon or whatever other moves you decide to opt into. Heatran is also just kind of there. Fire and Steel is really good against something like the Chi-Yu Fluttermane teams. We're able to resist the Fluttermane and then also be immune to the Chi-Yu heat waves and overheats. So having a tool against those, all three of those things are really annoying for Tropicos to beat. So Heatran is just that perfect Techmon, I think.
I know. I'm excited. I don't know about you, but it's been
I'm very
such
excited.
good Pokemon today, and
I
I'm so
cannot wait.
excited. Ah, I'm so excited to get into this team preview and go ahead and get into this game as well. Like we were kind of talking about, Tim is such an exceptional player, but Corey has made the ranks to get up here too. But I do want to see Clefairy. I'm a little biased towards that Clefairy.
I mean, our casters have our picks here, but let's jump into team preview here and team select and see what the players are thinking. We see Tim kind of hovering around. That Fluttermane Chi-Yu is like I said, going to be very strong into this Tropicos team. Maybe Corey wants to bring Heatran because of that, but it is really such a liability in this matchup. It's not as impactful because of something like the Clefairy and the Mienshao. It's just another Pokemon you have to worry about getting close combated, and you really want to save your Terastallization for Terapagos this game. And of course, Tim knows that. If you are playing against a Terapagos player, 9 times out of 10, the Terapagos is going to be the thing that Terastallizes, especially against Calyrex Shadow, where you have to Terastallize to kind of hit it.
Yeah.
You do have other game plans where you maybe can hit the Calyrex Shadow with something else, but you have to be very, very smart about that. But this is an amazing lead here. Corey is going to lead Ogerpon as well as the Tropicos, and Tim is going to lead the Fluttermane and the Chi-Yu.
Yeah, one thing I do want to kind of quickly mention for everybody who is watching, in Tim's team preview, we did see that Mienshao is actually focused Sash. So that is just one thing that we want to keep in mind kind of going into this game, especially with this crit lead with that Fluttermane and Chi-Yu. It's really interesting that Terapagos and Ogerpon really don't like to see these two together, because if Tim goes ahead and let's say does an Icy Wind and a Heat Wave, or an Icy Wind and something else, it can really do a lot of damage to that Ogerpon, because Sturdy only lasts once, everybody. So we need to make sure, if I'm Corey, to keep that Ogerpon from not getting knocked out.
The problem here, though, is that if you are Terapagos, your shield is going to get broken by the Icy Wind. There is no following me here, so if you are Corey, you're hoping for a Heat Wave miss from this Terapagos, or excuse me, from the Chi-Yu. But the cool thing is against these two special attackers, you are able to go for a Calm Mind. The Ogerpon actually hangs on, though!
Yo, Ogerpon said, I'm that girl, and they live on 1 HP, going ahead and Ivy cudgeling the Chi-Yu slot and knocking it out in a 1-hit KO. What an incredible play by Corey. I don't know if they count that, but hey, if you're watching right now, y'all better.
Wow, that was absolutely outstanding there from Corey. Maybe leaning to the fact that Corey's Ogerpon is a little bit more bulky. Obviously, that was a roll, but what a clutch survival. Getting rid of the Chi-Yu. There's going to be no more Beads of Ruin. No chance that Corey's Tropicos is going to have its special defense lowered by the Chi-Yu. Instead, now, having the +1 from that Calm Mind is going to be absolutely huge. And Tim can't bring in both the Mienshao and the Calyrex at the same time, so you have to be very, very smart now of when you protect it, when you don't, so that you don't get Terra Starstorm, because now that Corey's at +1, you can go for that Terastallization and start firing off those Starstorms, and it's going to be very, very strong. Ogerpon has kind of done its job here, knocked out the Chi-Yu. I'm just baffled at that turn 1 still.
Oh, same here. But I will say that we got to keep in mind that Corey is currently losing that speed war because of that Icy Wind, both on that Ogerpon and that Terapagos. So that's one thing that Tim has to keep in mind. We do see that the Ogerpon on Corey's side is going to go back into their hand, and then we see our big old cat hitting the field, Incineroar, doing the Intimidated on both Fluttermane and Calyrex Shadow Rider, but it doesn't really matter too much, and we do see the Terastallization coming out on Corey's side, obviously going on that Terapagos, making it one of the most beautiful Terastallization animations I've seen.
And not only is it beautiful, it's powerful here, and turning Terra Starstorm into a spread move. Moonblast there going to do a decent chunk to Incineroar as a Nasty Claw is fired off there from the Calyrex. This is going to be dangerous there. Starstorm fires off into both these slots here. The really cool thing about that turn, though, is the Ogerpon is coming back a free redirection later in the game. That +1 is still not enough. It does no damage to that Fluttermane and the Calyrex. Incineroar here, though, is here to help out, though, with potentially a knockoff or a Flare Blitz to knock out one of these Pokemon. If you are Tim, though, you have the option to protect on either of these Pokemon, depending on what slot you think Corey is going to go into. Either way, Starstorm has a chance to knock out this Calyrex as well, but can't knock out the Fluttermane. If the Ogre or if the Tropicos did low roll, then it potentially can knock out the Calyrex, but I wouldn't count on it. If I am in Corey's spot there, I would probably double into the Calyrex to maybe get a knockout onto it, but of course, as I mentioned before, Tim can just go for protect.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that Corey really has to kind of decide of, Is Tim going to go for a double protect, or are they going to be playing a little bit more aggressively? And can I get another Calm Mind up on my Terapagos? We do see that the Calyrex Shadow Rider on Tim's side does go for the protect. The Moonblast does go into the Incineroar, taking it down into the red, lowering that special attack, which means pretty much nothing for Incineroar. And that knockoff actually going out into the Flutter Mane, which very interesting on that side. And then Corey going, of course, for the Terra Starstorm into both of the slots. Doing nothing to the Calyrex Shadow Rider, but it will go ahead and knock out Tim's Flutter Mane.
So this is kind of scary because I actually think if you were in Corey's spot, you actually would have preferred to attack into the protect on the Calyrex. And the reason I say that is because knocking out the Flutter Mane gives Tim a free switch into Mienshao here. But if you kept the Flutter Mane around another turn, then you could have just gone for another Starstorm and beat out their protect, and there's no wide guard. But now that Mienshao's on the field, you have Fake Out, you have Close Combat, you have Wide Guard, you have Feint. You've kind of enabled Tim to set up this end game. Something like a Fake Out and a, or even a Terra fighting Close Combat. But I think a Fake Out and an Astral Barrage is honestly super fine here as well. Or if you want to knock out the Tropicos, Close Combat plus the Astral Barrage is also fine here.
Yeah, and we can see that Tim is kind of hovering back and forth regarding that, but I do think that might be the best play, either that Fake Out or that Close Combat. As we both know good and well, that Astral Barrage is just such a powerful move coming out of Calyrex Shadow Rider. And we do see that Terrestrialization on that Mienshao is going to go ahead and make it Terrestrialize into a fighting type. And one thing I do have to say, I love Shiny Mienshao, and it's so amazing to see it, but Tim is not really liking to see that Terapagos went for that protect. That Astral Barrage, of course, gonna do nothing to Terapagos, but it will do something to Incineroar. What's gonna happen? It's going to go ahead and knock it out, give Tim the Grimnay boost, and honestly put Tim in a really good position at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. You do have the potential of bringing Ogerpon here, but that's not going to really be able to do too much because the Mienshao is slower than this Calyrex, so you are just going to get redirected. The scary part is depending on what Corey's last Pokemon is, I guess. So depending on what that is, this could change the outcome of the game, but Ogerpon is going to come in here at 1 HP, here to hopefully save the day. I don't know if it's enough, though. Mienshao does have access to Feint as well if they think that Corey's maybe going to get the Protect again. But I think going for just a close combat Astral Barrage is the safest move you can make.
Yeah, I 100% agree, Tyson. I think Tim really does not get punished at all if they go ahead and go for that close combat into that Terapagos and going ahead and doing that Astral Barrage as well. I think it's one of those things that Calyrex Shadow Rider really brings to the table is Astral Barrage and just how much of a powerful move it actually is. And with that Terrestrialized fighting onto that Mienshao, that close combat is not going to feel good for whatever Pokemon goes ahead and locks into it. We do see that Follow Me going ahead and redirecting on that side, but we do know that this Astral Barrage is going to go ahead and knock out that Ogerpon, making it so that that close combat coming out of that Mienshao will go ahead and target into that Terapagos, which is just something that Corey did not want to see.
Yeah, this close combat is going to do so much. If it is bold, it has a chance to live. Tropicos does hang on. Corey is super, super happy with that. Both the Ogerpon and the Tropicos, they're able to live on 1 HP and Starstorm is going to go off. I think Tim kind of regretting that decision, not going for the wide guard instead to just guarantee the game. Calyrex actually doesn't go down, though, and Mienshao is going to hang on that Focus Sash. So this is still a game for Tim.
It's still a game for Tim, especially if we have that Citrus Berry coming onto that Calyrex Shadow Rider. I think it's one of those things that Tim really is showcasing is that sometimes a bulkier Calyrex Shadow Rider is the way to go, because to survive that Terapagos Terra Starstorm is impressive, but we do see the Amoonguss hitting on to Corey's side of the field. Tim does have quite a few boosts of that Grimnay onto that Calyrex, but it is going to be a very tricky situation, especially with that Amoonguss staring down Mienshao and Calyrex.
Yeah, the problem is, though, that you're going to be able to knock out this Amoonguss regardless of what happens. So your best move is to just Astral Barrage. Yeah, and then the Tropicos goes for Protect there, maybe trying to get a cheeky Spore into this Calyrex, but Astral Barrage should be enough to knock out the Amoonguss. If this doesn't, I need to talk to Corey about his spreads because these Pokemon have all lived on 1 HP every single time. But no, the Amogus does just get knocked out.
And it's a one-hit KO coming from Tim Edwards, Calyrex Shadow Rider, giving it another boost onto that special attack. I think you're so right, Tyson. I feel like we need to have a conversation with Corey after this because the amount of his Pokemon hanging on by just 1 or 2 HP has been so impressive, especially when you're talking about how fast and strong Tim Edwards' Pokemon are against them. But we do see that the battle is canceled on Corey's side. Them understanding, hey, I don't really have any momentum to get back into this. Let's take a second, go back into our team sheet and really going to figure out what is the actual way that I'm going to be able to beat Tim's Calyrex Shadow Rider and Mian Shao.
Yeah, and normally what is a negative matchup here for the Calyrex or Calyrex Shadow player was turned around with something like the Citrus Berry and the Nasty Plot on the Calyrex, which is normally not seen. I think just being able to position the Calyrex and get those Nasty Plots off is what allows you to kind of start to steamroll. Because if you can get rid of everything else next to the Tropicos, then something like the Mienshao with that Terra Fighting is able to do so much damage. And it's really impressive kind of how Tim was able to position that and get that into a spot. Even with Corey's Ogerpon getting a critical knockout on that Chiyu turn 1. I think one of the things I would have liked to see change from Corey is maybe having a bit of a stronger game plan instead of playing it turn by turn. Something I noticed in that game is that Corey kind of was on the back foot in a couple of those, and that might have been because of your game plans. Maybe adjusting around those, planning around something like the Urshifu potentially could be definitely smarter, or trying to get more damage on the Calyrex, so you're guaranteed to get a knockout after +1. Because if you don't have +2 on the Terapagos, you're not doing any damage, as we saw in that game.
Yeah, and I think that's one of those things that maybe for me, it's just really not as somebody who might not be a Terapagos believer, it's just one of those things that I don't really love about that Pokemon is that you really need to set up with those Calm Minds in order to really do damage in games. And for me, it's just not something that I'm really used to. But when you do see it performed well, it's incredible. And I think Corey actually is playing a phenomenal game with that Terapagos. I think they really just need to figure out, hey, how do I get around this Mienshao? Because this Mienshao is kind of causing me a few problems. It does just have its focus sash. So maybe I'm going to be able to dance around it a little bit better. But how can I go ahead and make sure that wide guard isn't a thing for me, but also how can I break through and take out that Calyrex Shadow Rider as well?
Yeah, and I'm really excited to see what both players are thinking as we get into our game 2 here. I think Tim still has adjustments he can make as well, but considering how close all the Pokemon came close. But Corey's going to lead the Ogerpon, Cornerstone, as well as the Ogerpon. Tim is going to switch it up, actually bring out Clefairy and the Calyrex Shadow.
I can't tell you how excited I am to see Clefairy on this field right now. We do see the Terra shift for that Terapagos over on Corey's side. And of course, Calyrex going ahead and popping its abilities as well. A very interesting board state. I'm surprised that Corey didn't change their lead. But however, this is kind of in Corey's favor, not being able to see that Flutter Mane Chiyu sitting across for them. Honestly, I feel like it makes them a little bit more comfortable at this position.
Absolutely, and the Calyrex here is going to be able to go for another Nasty Plot, I believe, just like last time, where it's kind of a setup war where you can just continue to set up against each other until one of you clicks an attack. If you do go for this cheeky move here on Tim's end, a Sing could be very scary. No, follow me here. There's a 55% chance that Tim just is able to put something to sleep, and that could definitely be detrimental. But Ivy covers with a critical hit.
A crit!
Buried there on the Calyrex, so something like a Calm Mind on this Tropicos is definitely going to be impactful, considering it's going to do a lot more. The Stellar Shield, or the Shield is on Tropicos is definitely going to be impactful as well, considering it's not broken. Let's see if Sing hits. It does!
Sing hits! And unfortunately, the turtle goes into its shell to go ahead and take a quick snap on Corey's side. What an amazing land on that sing, showing that Clefairy really loves to sing along. And we see that, hey, that Calyrex did take a big hit from that Ogre Pawn, but honestly, it was not for anything because that sing is going to be such a pivotal move onto that Terapagos. Wow, what an incredible turn one.
Yeah, and I think even with that critical hit, being able to put the Tropicos to sleep, it has to use this turn to burn a turn of sleep. So that's another free Nasty Plot you can put on your Calyrex, or you could just attack with something like the Draining Kiss to eat another Ivy Cudgel from this Ogre Pawn. The Mienshao here is also perfectly positioned to close combat next turn. Spiky Shield coming out from the opposing Ogre Pawn there. Really smart play from Corey. Draining Kiss is actually a contact move. You are going to take damage, but instead goes into the Tropicos, breaking that for a close combat next turn.
Wow. Very interesting play on Tim's side, going ahead and locking into that Terapagos on that side, but also bringing in the Mienshao pretty much for free at this point, as that Ogre Pawn went for that Spiky Shield, which is just, at this point, Tim is in a very comfortable position, especially with these two next to each other. Hey, it's like Calyrex and Clefairy, Calyrex and Mienshao. Like, we got some perfect double duos today.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, this Ogre Pawn Cornerstone has a free sturdy still, but I don't think that's going to matter too much. I think if you do go for a Draining Kiss here, that would also be smart, but you have to be very careful if you are Tim when you want to Terastallize. Otherwise, you could be susceptible to be taking super damage from the Tropico Starstorm. Of course, that's if Tropicos wakes up.
Yeah, and I think that's just one that we have to kind of be aware of, is that we did burn that one turn of sleep, but what's going to happen now? We don't really know, but we do know that the Ogre Pawn on Corey's side is going to go ahead and back into the team, and that Incineroar is going to land onto that field, causing that Intimidate to go ahead and lower the attack on Calyrex, which doesn't really matter, but Mienshao not taking anything because it's so focused on making sure
locked in.
that locked in, exactly, Tyson. And you know who else is locked in? That Terapagos, as we see the Terastallization on Corey's side of the field. But now we just have to cross our fingers to see if it's going to wake up or if it's not.
And waking up is what you would hope for here, as Astral Barrage is going to go into an immunity and a resist here on the Incineroar, though. It is +2, so this is going to do a lot of damage to that Incineroar. Tropicos does wake up, though, and Starstorm is going to fire off here. I think this is going to be enough to knock out the Shadow. Let's see if it hangs on, though.
It lit! It survives!
Wow.
I need to message Tim after this and ask Tim what their spread is, because that is incredible survival on 26 HP. Of course, that Mienshao living on 1 because of that focus sash, but what an incredible spread that we have on that Calyrex on Tim's side.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, even with that, though, you're still in a really scary spot because you know that the Mienshao eats a close the Tropicos eats a close combat even if you Terastallize. So you have to kind of be very, very smart this turn. Something like a double from the close combat and a Draining Kiss might be very obvious in this Tropicos. And if you could do that, you can go for Protect, and then you can attack with the Incineroar, and that can be very scary. So if you are Tim here, you have to kind of make a decision of what you're going to do. Predicting a wide guard here from Corey, or if Corey predicts a wide guard here as well, that could also be very scary, getting another free Calm Mind, or just potentially setting up a substitute.
Yeah, I feel like this is a very pivotal turn, especially on Corey's side, as we see that Incineroar going down, getting that critical hit as well. Truthfully, I don't think that really mattered for Tim. We see the Grivnay boost happening, but what did Corey go ahead and do? And they did go for that Terra Starstorm, that wide guard, making sure that everyone is a little bit more protected on Tim's side. So an excellent read for Tim.
Yeah, I think a substitute there obviously would have been optimal, but you have no idea what Tim is going to click there. You know they have a couple options, but you can't always 100% guess which one they're going to go for. The Airstream for Corey, as that final Pokemon, we didn't get to see it last game, is going to come in here. It's going to It's going to be able to threaten a lot of damage here into the Kyrex and the Mian Chao, considering they have very low HP. So when I say a lot of damage, I mean they're in Aqua Jet range, and that's very important to note here.
Oh, it's very, very interesting. Tim is in a really interesting position. He's got that +3 special attack on that Calyrex, but he also still has a Pokemon in the back that we really haven't seen yet. So I'm kind of excited to see what might come out to go ahead and maybe disrupt just a little bit more during this. But we do see that terrestrialization on Tim's side going into that Mienshao to try and take out or at least do as much damage as possible to that Terrapagos, as Tim now realizes, hey, I really need to get rid of this Pokemon on this field. We do see the Aqua Jet going into the Calyrex, going ahead and knocking it out. But honestly, not a bad thing for essentially Tim to see, because that wasn't that Mienshao, as we do see the close combat going ahead and targeting into that Terrapagos, bringing it down to about 20%. But you know what? I feel like Tim kind of set themselves up in a pretty decent position, knowing from what is in the back of their team right now.
And Terrapagos is actually opting for Earth Power instead of Substitute, so I was just spitting like absolute blasphemy, where the Terrapagos didn't even have Substitute. Actually, is opting to run 2 attacks, and then Calm Mind, Earth Power, Starstorm, and Protect. Very interesting set here from Corey, but hey, I mean, they're in Tough Cut and I'm not. Chiyu and Clefairy, though, are going to be the last 2 Pokemon for Tim, and against an Urshifu Water and a +1 Terrapagos, this is looking very scary.
Very scary indeed. But also, one of the things that we do have to keep in mind for Tim as well is that we do not have any more terrestrialization available. So this Chiyu is a little bit nervous, especially with that Urshifu sitting across from it. However, this Clefairy is at full HP and does have that redirection with Follow Me. But keep in mind, this Clefairy has no other damaging moves, but it does have a little help that it can go ahead and give a hand to Chiyu, as we see that the Terrapagos is going to go ahead and protect at Corey's side. The Surging Strike is going to go into the Chiyu, and it's going to go ahead and knock it out.
Yeah, if you are Tim, you're hoping there that Corey, for some reason, goes into the Clefairy there, just targeting it, assuming it's going to get Following Me, and you can somehow get a Heatwave burn or super, like, critical hit or something like that. But unfortunately, Corey's going to take it here, and this is going to be, I believe, our first game 3 of the day.
Yeah, I'm pumped right now. Can I just see that? What an incredible set by these trainers. Corey really understanding how they can go ahead and go around what Tim was doing and be able to kind of punish them a little bit more, especially that Mienshao. Really understanding, like, hey, your Mienshao cannot OHKO me. So let's go ahead and change this game plan a little bit.
And what is a very negative matchup there for Tim? I think Tim still played that very amazingly, and was able to bring it down to the wire. I mean, they won game 1 and then almost winning game 2. Very, very thin margins. I think this game 3 is in either player's hands for sure. The Calyrex and the Clefairy, though, I don't think was cutting it. I think the pressure from the Chiyu Fluttermane was just really, really good at trading damage and cleaning up with the Mienshao and the Calyrex was definitely the smarter move. I get maybe wanting to switch game plans, but I think as long as you don't miss the Ogerpon, the knockout, the game becomes infinitely easier.
I agree 100%. And I do think, especially with that Terrapagos having those leftovers, is really kind of an interesting thing for this team. And also, I find it fascinating that Corey, instead of bringing that Amoonguss, instead brought that Urshifu with that Mystic Water, and that Mystic Water really kind of being that pivotal item to go ahead and take out that Chiyu with those Surging Strikes. So I think they really made the correct correction into game 2 to go ahead and punish Tim a little bit more, saying, hey, I know you're going to bring Chiyu. You're not going to fall for the same thing as before with this Ogerpon, but let me just put a little sneaky surprise in the back for you as well. So incredible change for Corey on their side, but we're going to have to see what happens into game 3, which I'm so excited for. Our first game 3, Tyson.
And in Top Cut, nonetheless, we see Corey lead the Terrapagos and the Ogerpon as always, and Tim going back to the tried and true Fluttermane and Chiyu. Just threatening so much immediate pressure here against Corey. It's going to be really hard to kind of maintain it. I think the important thing is breaking that Terra Star Shield and then also doing chip to it so that close combat later is much more of a threat. Because if you do leave the Tropicos to the last game, you kind of give Corey an option to protect the Tropicos and then eventually live the CC, which is very, very scary in a late game scenario. But if you can do chip damage to it with Flutterman and Chi-Yu in the early game, then you're better off a lot of the time if you're 10.
Exactly. And I think really talking about that Ogerpon over there, it's still one of those Pokemon that you really have to be careful, especially with that Chi-Yu swimming over on Tim's side. So I think at this point, Tim is going to have to say, hey, am I going to try and get rid of this Ogerpon? Or am I just going to let them go ahead and do some shenanigans over there? We do see that the Ogerpon is going to go for that spiky shield over on Corey's side. And that Terapagos is just kind of sitting there, just ready to go ahead and have this icy wind and this heat wave coming from Tim's side. So very fascinating first turn that we're seeing. The spiky shield is very interesting for me to kind of see, especially with those two Pokemon sitting across from it. But I don't think it's necessarily the wrong play. But we do see that heat wave is going to do so much damage that Terapagos almost bringing it down to half HP, tied in with that icy wind.
Corey not relying on the Ogerpon living there, trying to get an extra turn, because if it does live this next turn, then you've at least burned a turn with Spiky Shield, and that's another Calm Mind on Terapagos potentially. But you do have to be very careful if you do want to preserve this Ogerpon or not. If you don't Heat Wave here, if you're Tim and you go for Snarl instead, yes, you're lowering the Terapagos, but if they Calm Mind again, then you're not really doing much, and you're not getting the Ogerpon, and you're also getting knocked out by an Ivy Cudgel. So you have to be very smart with your turn here if you are Tim.
Yeah, and I think that fish is just really not going to want to see anything kind of coming towards it, especially from that Ogerpon. Keep in mind, everybody, that they are running a Covert Cloak Chi-Yu, so having the ability to kind of switch things around is really nice as well. But we do go ahead and see that Terastallization on Corey's side going into that Terapagos, of course, making that Terastallization happen and making that Terrastar Storm go ahead and hit both of those Pokemon across the field. An incredible animation. Once again, we do see the Icy Wind come out from that Fluttermane onto both of those Pokemon and going ahead and dropping the speed just a little bit more as we go ahead and see that Heat Wave connect to both of them as well. And the Ogerpon living again!
Wow. And Ivy Cudgel able to knock out the Chi-Yu there. So that's 2 times Corey's Ogerpon is able to live that combination. That's really good to know if this is a game 2. Earth Power going into the Fluttermane stuff, looking at the Starstorm, interesting choice there. Not going to do about the same damage, a little less if you do a Starstorm there, considering it would have been single target. But that was a pretty good turn, I'd say, for Corey. The unfortunate thing, though, is that Mienshao or Calyrex could come in here and finish off this Ogerpon.
Yeah, but I think Ogerpon really did what it wanted to do in the sense of it really wanted to make sure that Chi-Yu was gone with the wind and making sure that it survived both that icy wind and that heat wave. Once again, I am gonna need to know what how Corey trained their Ogerpon, because that is incredible. What a sturdy Ogerpon that we've seen today. But we also are going to go ahead and see that Tim is kind of going around, seeing what they want to go ahead and do. It's going to be a really interesting scenario at this point. Is the Mienshao going to go ahead and Terrastallize and try to take out that Terapagos? Or are they going to go ahead and Wide Guard? It's going to be very fascinating. We do see them to go ahead and lock into that Terrastallization. So we're going to see the Terrastallization on Tim's side into that Mienshao, making it that Terra fighting once again, giving that fist on top of its little head, and locking into that close combat into that Terapagos. We do see the Spiky Shield coming on Ogerpon's side to make sure it can live another turn, and going ahead and seeing that Shadow Ball lock into it, doing obviously nothing, of course, because it's protected, and that close combat locking into that Terapagos, hitting it 1, 2, 3 times, and they're out as the Terapagos goes down on Corey's side, taking out Corey's restricted in this game 3. Now we go ahead and do see that Corey is going to bring out their Urshifu with that Mystic Water. So one thing that we do need to keep in mind is that it is pretty strong. There's no Chiyu in sight anymore, but that Urshifu is still such a pivotal Pokemon that we can interact with at this current board stage. That Fluttermane is really not going to want to take a Surgery Strikes, nor is that Mienshao. So it's going to be really interesting. Protects don't matter here because of that Unseen Fist ability, and it's just going to be kind of a Rochambeau on who Corey is going to lock into. Is it going to be the Fluttermane, or is it going to be that Mienshao?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both players here have done a great job at kind of positioning with the tools they have. And again, in this upward hill matchup that Tim is kind of fighting in, to see him kind of position his pieces and get them into a spot where he's able to take them one by one, this is just really, really well played from Tim. So seeing both the Ogre Pawn and the Tropicos be down, this close combat's going to fire off an Urshifu. This is looking very, very rough for Corey.
Yeah, that close combat going into the Urshifu, taking it down to about 20-25 HP, but that Surging Strike going into that Fluttermane, knocking it out, and putting Tim down to their last two Pokemon as well. As we all probably can assume, it probably is the restricted of that Calyrex Shadow Rider, which is something that Corey just might not want to see right now, truthfully.
Yeah, you know it's coming though. And I don't know what Corey really can do here. The Focus Sash is still intact for Mienshao. Incineroar comes out here, but it's staring down in the inner focus, Terra fighting Mienshao, and it's just going to be fascinating with both it and the Urshifu. And because Terastallization is already spent on something like the Tropicos, close combat should be enough to just knock out the Incineroar. And in combination with an Astral Barrage, I don't think Corey has a response to this.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a tough decision for Corey right now. You're really trying to have to bank on maybe some different types of misplays kind of on Tim's side. But I feel like with, let's say, this close combat going into that Incineroar, it's just a really good, clean play. But we do see the double up onto the Mienshao.
And that was a really smart play from Corey. If you do want to weigh back into this game, Fake Out and Aqua Jet has to be enough to knock out there, and it was. So now it's an Incineroar versus Calyrex 1v1, and with Terastallization spent, this game might have just gone in Corey's favor.
Wow, especially if that Incineroar is running that knockoff, it is going to be kind of a tough decision for Tim because that knockoff can go ahead and go into that Calyrex, knock off that Citrus before it can even eat it up. And we see that their Astral Barrage is going to go into the Incineroar. It is a +1, but it's going to go ahead and bring it down to 25 HP. We see the knockoff going off, and it's going to one-hit KO!
And really well played from Corey there, recognizing that Fake Out and Aqua Jet. You don't really care about the Fake Out stopping the Mienshao from attacking. You care about the damage it does. So Fake Out, because of how many close combats the Mienshao had gone for, Fake Out Aqua Jet actually gets that knockout where it normally would not. And then you're able to 1v1 against the Calyrex. Really, really well played there from Corey.
A crazy game played by Corey and an incredible end game. Literally, me and you were like, hey, this looks a little tough for Corey. And then Corey came back and clutched it. And it's really showing once again that Incineroar is the greatest of all time. LeBron, Michael Jordan,
he is LeBron. He is the
Incineroar.
LeBron of VGC.
Exactly. And it's so wonderful to see that Corey went ahead and took that game 3 and is now into grand finals.
Yeah, and congrats to Corey for making it all the way to finals. First time being featured here on stream today, is going to be in finals, and that'll, I know, will be a great match to watch. I'm rooting for the Tropicos. Sorry, Calyrex, and sorry, Clefairy, but maybe you guys could try it another time. Maybe you'll show off in Atlanta. Who knows? But let's see what our next match at Top Cut is. But before we do that, I think we're going to take a quick break before we get to that other Top Cut match. So let's do that, and don't go anywhere. We're going to be back for more VGC action.